The combatants are set. 4 more wins will decide which team is cemented in NBA history. Will Jason Tatum and the Celtics finally break through after coming so close time and time again? Or will Luka Doncic and the Mavericks pry it out of their hands? The tension is in the air. The NBA Finals start now. The Celtics have had a very interesting path to the NBA Finals, and it's honestly questioned a lot of people in terms of how good they are and how dominant their run really has been. They've only lost 2 games the entire run, but their competition has not been very stiff as they played a dinged up Miami Heat team, to be honest, beyond dinged up. They're missing Jimmy Butler and Terry Rozier, which is 2 very, very big players for that team, to say the least. They end up beating that team in 5 games, go on to the Cavaliers, who honestly weren't faring too well against them anyway. So I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt in that series and just say they were the better team. But they were also dinged up playing games without Donovan Mitchell, who was playing very well against them, and Jarrett Allen, who's a huge piece to that team. They also went on to the next round to beat the Pacers in 4, but each of those games, except for maybe game 3, I believe, were super close contests, which really does lead people to ask how dominant their run really was, only losing 2 games, which I think is very interesting. I don't think I've seen a run get questioned as much as this Celtics run has been, and I think it is amplified by the fact that they didn't play the Knicks, who were also hurt, and they didn't play the Bucks, who were also hurt. They also missed out on Joel Embiid, which I think is getting swept under the radar. I think all of the huge stars out east, besides Donovan Mitchell and Halliburton, I guess, were completely dodged. But even in the Pacers series, Hallie got hurt, and in the Cavs series, Mitchell got hurt. So the Celtics really did miss out on most of the stars out east and en route to this finals berth. Regardless of that, I think this championship would mean a lot to the Celtics. This would put them first in wins for a franchise, finals wins for a franchise, and the biggest theme for this is really JT and JB's duo working. I think if they do lose this series, it would have catastrophic impacts for those two. I think this team would get split up. I don't think this duo would come back next year, even though I think if they do come back next year, they have a great shot of making it back to the same position. But just 6 years in the making, almost 7 years in the making of this duo, for them to come out with no rings but a couple of finals appearances, I think that's pretty disappointing for what their standards have been. And I think this is definitely a series that they need to win to keep this duo alive. And the Mavs path, I feel like, has been the exact opposite. I've seen nothing but praise for the Mavericks' path to the finals. In the first round, they beat the Clippers in 6. I personally think the Clippers have been a better team than any team that the Celtics have faced so far in their run. And that was just the first round in the bottom of the teams that Dallas has played so far in this playoff run. Even if you take a team like the injured Cavs or the injured Pacers over the injured Clippers, I will add that in so nobody gets mad. Kawhi did not play, but even then I still think that was a better team. But regardless, we have the Thunder and Timberwolves, who no doubt are better than any other team that the C's played, and the Mavs disposed of them. I will say that both series were very close in terms of the games, with only a couple blowouts here and there. The Mavericks, however, I believe that could have been a 5-game series as well. They ended up taking care of the Timberwolves in 5, so their run looks a lot more dominant, only losing, I think, 3 more games than the Celtics did. Only 5 games total to the Celtics 2, with much more stiff competition. So I think the Mavericks absolutely had a harder run, and that's going to matter a lot in my opinion. I think once we get to the nitty-gritty, those reps of the teams that we played are going to show. I think having to play steeper competition really does get you ready for this finals, and I don't think the Celtics have played competition even akin to anything that Dallas has played, especially not the Dallas team itself. This is going to be their toughest series so far, and that's why I think that the Mavericks could really catch the C's off guard. I don't think they've played anybody this good in their run yet. What this would mean for the Dallas Mavericks in terms of winning, I think Luka immediately becomes a general consensus best player / face of the league after this. At only 25 years old, making 5 All-NBA appearances in 6 years, and then having a ring on top of that in your first 6 seasons. I think that's incredible. That's not a feat that many people can boast, and I think that immediately makes Luka the greatest player in the league. Obviously, Jokic is right behind him, and then we got guys like Giannis and Embiid as well who are challenging for that spot, but you know how it goes. Whoever wins the championship immediately is going to get that stature, at least until the next season. But I do think it's well deserved for Luka. It's not like it's out of nowhere. I feel like if it were Ant, he would probably get that same status with less build up to it, less reps to it, less history behind it. I think Luka has all the buildups to be a great player and a best player, face of the league kind of player. For Kyrie, I think this will arguably make Kyrie the greatest second option of all time. Winning rings aside, LeBron and Luka helping them get rings, and honestly, none of those runs were super easy, but Kyrie played a huge part in that. I think Kyrie's probably best playoff runs, not even probably, his best playoff runs absolutely did come with Cleveland, and they came with Dallas. So I think Kyrie as a number 2 option is really showing what he can do. Again, and being so far removed from his last finals appearance, I think is very impressive how he just turned it up. I also think if they win this title, that we have to say this is the best offensive backcourt ever, because this is really the engine that runs this team is Luka and Kyrie. We obviously have our enforcers. We got PJ, Gaff, we got Lively. Those guys are super important. We got our shooters and DJJ and PJ Washington. But without Kyrie and Luka, we are not here. So if they end up pulling this out, it's obviously going to be mainly because of those 2 guys. And I think we can safely say that that's the best offensive backcourt of all time if they pull this championship out, especially with the stiff defensive competition that they do have to play ahead of them. To get into some analysis on how both of these teams match up, I think the C's have a lot of advantages. They're very switchable, very switchable. I think if Porzingis does play, they have guys who 1 through 5 can get switched onto the perimeter. And that's very important in a league like this, especially playing these 2 guys who you're going to need perimeter defenders for. And you have some of the best in the league. You have Drew Holiday, you have Derek White, you have Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. All of those guys have the potential to play some decent defense on the perimeter. And I think making sure you switch those guys onto Luka and Kyrie as much as possible, get different bodies on them, is very important, and it's going to give them an edge. Multiple play starters and ball handlers and scorers. Those same 4 guys, including KP and even Al Horford to some extent, are really adept in that offense. They can all shoot, they can all start plays, end plays, and minus those 2 big men, they can all handle the ball. Maybe Jaylen Brown not as well. You can force Jaylen Brown into some turnovers, and you can force Jaylen Brown to have bad games if you play your defense correctly. But those guys together as a cohesive unit do pick each other up, and that leads into my next point, that JT does not have to dominate. And I think that's the most important part of this thing, that Jason Tatum has shown throughout the playoffs and the season that he does not have to dominate to get wins. And that's really the allure of the Celtics team, is that they're so deep and their squad is so good that Jason Tatum doesn't have to go out there and get 30. I think Luka and Kyrie more or less do have to go off. They do have to go out and get it every night for us to win this series. Obviously, we have guys who can pick up the pieces sometimes, but not as consistently as that Celtics roster. I feel like for the C's to win, their best bet is to show Luka multiple bodies, annoy him, blitz him. And I think that's very important, because Luka one-on-one, when he gets comfortable with a defender, you're toast. There's nothing you can really do. So making sure he's not as comfortable as he could possibly be is very important, even though I don't think showing him multiple bodies is going to neutralize him or anything like that. Luka has seen every defense you could possibly play on him. So it's just something to add on, though. Make sure to stretch the floor. I think my team honestly does struggle with that, stretching the floor. If you can space it out and make sure that you have shooters in the corners and you can play inside out ball, that's a very good way to get buckets on us. Another way I think that could help them win is forcing Luka to play defense. And that honestly all plans on what Dallas's game plan is going into the defensive side, because if you can force JT into looks, having to guard JT a lot, having to guard JB a lot, making him work off ball, he's going to get tired, and you want him to have to pick a side. Are you going to play offense or are you going to play defense? Because if you allow him to do both, or if you allow him to sit and rest on defense, that's the worst option you could possibly have. So if you can force Luka to be active the entire game, that definitely gives him an advantage. Now let's get to my team. I think the Mavs' advantages is obviously the 2 flamethrowers we have on the court. If Kyrie and Luka go off, the odds of us winning are super high, super high. If they both have efficient games, if they both start playmaking and running the offense up to the standard that they can, it's going to be very, very tough to beat us, and I think that's really where we shine. I honestly believe that we have the 2 best players in the series, and I'm picking Kyrie over Tatum at the moment. I think overall, Tatum is a better player, but from what I've seen in these past couple of rounds, I'm going to pick Kyrie over Tatum in this playoffs. I think Luka and Kyrie have to set the tone, have to set the stage. I think we currently have the best 2 players, so I'm going to hope that they can get it done. I'm going to hope those 2 flamethrowers can flamethrow, get hot, get on fire, and just start pulling like we did last series against Minnesota. I think our team is also switchable, not as switchable as the Celtics, but we have guys. Kyrie, very underrated defender. Luka, very underrated defender at this point. We have DJJ, we have PJ Washington, and we have Derek Lively, who is an very underrated perimeter defender, especially on bigs. But I honestly think the biggest advantage we have is that we're bigger. Daniel Gafford and Derek Lively have shown that even with the biggest centers, if they can get a mismatch or if they can get good positioning, they're going to get you easy buckets, easy boards, easy blocks. So I think us having those two big guys is a very key and essential portion to our team. We're also very lanky outside of Kyrie. Luka's obviously, like, they say he's 6'6". I think Luka's closer to 6'8", 6'9", to be honest. We have DJJ, who doesn't have the stocky size on him, but he's very long, wiry. PJ has the size on him, and he's long and wiry. Same thing can be said with D-Live, and Gafford is our real big, stocky enforcer down low. So we definitely have the bigger roster, in my opinion, in terms of that. And that does give us a slight advantage in that aspect. For how the Mavericks should win, I think forcing and attacking mismatches like we have doing, attacking the pick and roll, especially attacking Al Horford and Kristaps Porzingis, who have the slower foot speed, is absolutely going to be crucial for us. And we've already been doing that. I think this team is probably the best team in the league at doing that, and we have the personnel to do that as well. Even if it's not Luka and Kyrie attacking all the time, shoot, Jaden Hardy is low-key very mixy. PJ Washington has been getting better at taking it off the dribble. DJJ has been getting better at taking it off the dribble. And even if they're not scoring, finding reads, finding other guys to get the ball too. These mismatches also just give time for lobs and assists to the corner, all of that. I also think we have to move smart on blitzes. Once again, our team is very good at doing that. Our two stars are very high IQ players. They're very good players. They have a great handle, great passing ability. So when they see blitzes coming, they know what to do with the ball. They're very patient, especially Luka. His patience is crazy. The way Kyrie runs the offense is very fluid. So the ball movement, I'm assuming, is going to be very, very good in this series. And that being said, the role players do have to hit shots. I'm guaranteeing you that the role players are going to be open. They're going to be super focused on Luka and Kyrie. Like I said, that's the engine. If you can get those guys to be just a little bit off, that's going to help you tremendously. So I would say the role players, PJ, DJ, Josh Green, Jaden Hardy, THJ, if you end up getting minutes again, when you're in that corner and you're open, because you will get open, you got to hit that shot. And lastly, I would say try to get Luka in the best defensive position possible, meaning don't have Luka, the way I said the Celtics should attack Luka, the Mavericks should openly avoid that happening. We should have Luka trying to switch on the centers or trying to switch on the shooters, trying to switch on to the guy who's going to be handling the ball the least or the slowest foot guy, so he can save some energy for offense. I think Luka works at his best when he is allowed to really put more of his energy on the offensive end. I've seen Luka play good offense and good defense, but you can see the difference when he gets tired on defense and has to go play offense versus when he gets a little bit of time to not work as hard on the defensive end and then go and kill them on the offensive end. So I think really trying to match up Luka with a Drew Holiday would benefit them a lot. I think he should stay far away from Derek White and more than likely stay away from Jason Tatum. Jaylen Brown and Drew Holiday and Kristaps and Al Horford. Those are the guys that I would try to get Luka matched up on. And I know a lot of people are going to be like, put Luka on Al Horford and Kristaps. Yeah, Kristaps is not strong. So if Kristaps and Luka are matched up against each other, at least on Luka's end for defense, I think that's a great matchup. He doesn't have to run too much. Kristaps is not a post player. He's not going to bang down low. And if he does, Luka is a lot stronger and stockier than him. And that's a guy who likes to play on the perimeter. Kristaps and Karl-Anthony Towns do play very similar, so I don't think that would be a terrible matchup. I think Luka could really benefit from guarding somebody with slower foot speed. And that's really all I have on this series, to be honest. I think it's going to be a great series. I think both teams have a great shot of beating each other. I'm going Dallas in 6, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.